Hello everyone. So again, welcome back to our latest lecture session. So we have been discussing the relevant aspects with respect to kinetics, right? And I think the example we have been looking at was when we have a hydroxyl radical, right? Let's just look at what we have been up to. Hydroxyl radical, it can react either with the targets or the scavenger, right? Because again, hydroxyl radical is a very strong oxidant or oxidizing agent, and it's also relatively non-selective. So depending upon the relevant kinetics with respect to either the targets or with respect to scavengers, you can have a relatively more efficient system or inefficient system, right? And we looked at how we can analyze that particular aspect, right, in terms of rates of production of the radical and rates of the oxidation of the relevant target, right? We looked at those particular examples, and I guess we also looked at how to be able to estimate the rate constant of your particular what do we say reaction of hydroxyl radical oxidizing your target, right? Usually you have a target and you do not know the rate constants, right, of these particular what do we say reactions that you are looking for specifically, but you will have what do we say data available. Let us say usually the NIST database, right, NIST database, and that you will have the relevant rate constants of hydroxyl radical with most of the usually encountered compounds or scavengers, right. So given a particular rate constant, as in I think with respect to K, if we had Ks, we saw how we can set up the equation and then by regression come up with your unknown rate constant, which is Kt, right. So again we are going to have spend few more minutes on kinetics, right, and this aspect here obviously we are going to, the aspect here we are going to look at is mostly relevant to what you would see in the atmosphere, right. So I guess the example we have is sulfur dioxide, right. And sulfur dioxide, right, say I guess depending upon the type of or the quality of your particular fuel, you can have what we say sulfur dioxide being emitted into the atmosphere, right, from various power plants or during combustion of the relevant fuels, or obviously again during let us say volcanic eruptions you can have sulfur dioxide given out into the atmosphere at considerable concentrations, right. So again we know that sulfur dioxide can lead to what do we say acid rain, again our acid base relevant chemical process, right. Sulfur dioxide can lead to formation of what do we say acid rain, and also sulfur dioxide is also toxic to the human beings, right. But obviously, not obviously I guess, but there is a mechanism in the atmosphere that leads to this particular oxidation of sulfur dioxide to sulfate, right, SO4 2-, which is less toxic and benign too. Let us look at that particular system and how that goes about, I guess. So obviously here it is dependent upon a radical chain reaction, right. So again whenever you have radicals, I guess right, you are going to have chain reactions. Yes, you are going to have either forming what do we say multiple or further radicals that can lead to other relevant reactions, right. So let us look at what we are up to here, I guess. So here we are talking about sulfur dioxide, right, and then sulfur dioxide oxidation by oxygen in atmosphere is how people look at, or what people look at with respect to what do we say decrease in sulfur dioxide concentration in the atmosphere. But this is the simplistic explanation. Let us look at what actually happens there when people are referring to sulfur dioxide oxidation by oxygen, right. So let us look at what happens out there. So obviously we are going to have what do we say a reaction leading to formation of your particular radical, right, of your particular radical. So you are going to have radical formation. So usually we call this step the initiation reaction, right. Again we are talking about with respect to atmospheric chemistry here, right. So let us look at the relevant reaction. So sulfur dioxide in the presence of UV light usually I believe, right, can form the sulfite anion radical, right, and again release the electron, aqueous electron, which has relatively low what do we say half lives, right. This obviously is a strong reducing agent, right, and obviously H plus here. So here let us say sulfur dioxide leads to formation of a radical and an aqueous electron by itself too, right. So this is what happens, and let us see what happens here with respect to the different chain reactions, right. So here we have the relevant chain reactions, right. This sulfite anion radical reacts with oxygen to form SO5, or it is oxidized, sulfur is oxidized, that is what you can see here by oxygen. And again this particular SO5 anion radical, right, again has another chain reaction here, again it is going to react with SO2, right. This is what we were looking at, or sulfur dioxide here, right. So let us look at where sulfur dioxide is being lost now. So here we had sulfur dioxide, right, transforming into the sulfite anion radical, and here we also see that one of the byproducts, right, which is SO5 anion radical, can again react with sulfur dioxide to what do we say now, form I believe SO4 2 minus and SO4 or sulfate anion radicals, right. So, in the next step, you know, we have another particular aspect with respect to again SO2, right, oxidation of SO2 by the sulfate anion radical, and again SO4 2 minus and SO3 or sulfite anion radical being formed, right. So, these are the chain reactions that we see here, right. So, one with respect to or based on the sulfite anion radical formed when let us say UV, I guess, right, leads to formation of this particular anion radical from sulfur dioxide, and then the relevant chain reactions, you know, chain reactions. But if you look at the net reaction, let us see what it turns out to be, right. The net reaction, when you look at the net or overall reaction, you see that it looks like it is sulfur dioxide oxidation by oxygen to sulfate, right. But obviously, if you look at the relevant aspects, you see that it is not just oxygen leading to oxidation of your particular sulfur dioxide, right. But it is that you have a radical being formed, the sulfite anion radical, and then you have relevant chain reactions which lead to consumption of your sulfur dioxide, right. And the key here is that, you know, in this particular reaction we are not consuming or leading to loss of your particular sulfate anion radical, right. What does that mean? So, if you are not in this particular chain reaction, you are not it is not net consumer of your sulfite anion radical, right. What does that mean now? So, the sulfite anion radical what we say formed earlier, right, you know, it is free to not free, I guess, the concentrations are not going to be decreased due to these sets of chain reactions. But obviously, radicals are remarkably reactive, and there is going to be a quenching or scavenging reaction. Let us see what it is. So, the termination or quenching or scavenging reaction, it is the sulfite anion radical reacting with itself to form the form sulfate or sulfur dioxide though, I guess, and this obviously happens when the concentrations of these radicals are relatively high, right. And so, this is what actually happens when someone refers to sulfur dioxide loss due to its oxidation by oxygen, right. The key is that you have what do we say, initiation of formation of radical and then the relevant chain reactions, and then the overall reaction seems like it is oxygen oxidizing the sulfur dioxide, right. Again, so for this obviously if we are trying to build a model, right, it is going to be relatively complex because you have relevant I mean many radicals, right, you have many radicals, right, and you again will have the relevant reactions, right. So, here we have not considered all the other compounds that can be present in the atmosphere, but you can build a model wherein let us say you can use let us say ordinary differential equation solvers in MATLAB, let us say, and you can build a model let us say to be able to solve for this particular system, let us say, right, or predict this particular system, or I am sure there are other air pollution related models that can assist in getting this done, right. So, let us move on. So, now we are going to move on to equilibrium, right. So, again the key here was that in the context of redox process, what do we understand or what do we understand from our background? We know that kinetics is the aspect that plays a huge role, right, but what does equilibrium give you an idea about, you know, what does that tell you about? So, it tells you whether obviously a reaction is feasible or not. So, obviously we will also look at equilibrium. Why? Because you want to know is a reaction feasible or not, right. So, we are going to look at feasibility of a particular reaction. So, keep in mind that in this context it does not tell us what the concentrations at equilibrium are going to be, again because rarely will the system reach equilibrium, but understanding the equilibrium will tell me whether this particular redox reaction is in the first what do we say case thermodynamically feasible or not, right. So, that is particular aspect we are going to look at, let us say. So, with respect to understanding the feasibility of system, there are what do we say different approaches, right. So, the first approach would be with respect to Q by K, one particular approach, and then with respect to the redox potential PE. So, we will look at these two aspects or these two sets of variables to understand, let us say, is my reaction or can I consider this particular redox reaction to be thermodynamically feasible or not, and also understand in terms of these variables especially PE, right. What would you expect with respect to the system if it is at equilibrium, right. So, let us look at these aspects, I guess. So, reaction feasibility obviously, right, that is what we are looking at. So, Q by K approach, Q again what is that now? The ion activity product, K is the equilibrium coefficient, right. So, obviously Q will be equal to K at when the system is at equilibrium, obviously, right. So, again how do we write down Q, ion activity product, right. So, Q would be equal to activity, or in this case concentration, I am approximating it by concentration raised to of the products raised to their relevant stoichiometric coefficients, right, by the relevant variables for the reactants, right. And obviously when it is at equilibrium, the Q and K values are going to be the same, right. And again, as we know, K equilibrium coefficient values are available in most of the they are standard values, right, and they are available for the standard conditions at most in most of your relevant books, right, or in the NIST database. So, obviously we are going to look at, let us say, Q relative to K and try to understand, let us say, is the system going to be at equilibrium or not though, right, or is the reaction feasible or not for a given set of conditions. So, obviously if Q less than K, we know that what is that now, the reaction is feasible. Q and K are equal, we know that the equilibrium has already been reached, right, and it has no further motive to travel in any other direction, right. Travel as in the sense I am using layman's terms here, obviously, and if obviously Q is greater than K, it means that it's the reaction is not feasible. So, let us look at one particular example here. So, we have one particular half reaction. So, obviously we are talking about redox reactions here, right. So, here we have what do we say, the relevant constant, let us say log K to be minus 15.12 for this particular reduction half reaction. Usually in your particular standard tables or such, you will see that most of these half reactions are written as reduction, right. You know, that is the way they are written, and the relevant what do we say, constants are given, right. So, let us look at the other particular what do we say equation 2, right. So, we have oxygen reduction, right, and we have the log K value given here, right. So, now let us say I want to know, let us say, how feasible is it for iron to be oxidized, you know, 0 valent iron, let us say, to be oxidized by oxygen, right. You know, this is what let us say I am trying to look at. I have the two reactions, one is the reduction of Fe2 plus to Fe naught, and obviously reduction of oxygen to H2O, let us say, right. But obviously what is it that I am trying to understand? I am trying to look at, let us say, how feasible is it for a particular set of or for a particular scenario that this 0 valent iron or iron can be oxidized by oxygen. What does it mean for corrosion to occur, right. So, let us look at that, I guess, right. Obviously now I need to look at the overall reaction, right. So, I can look at the overall reaction, but I can't obviously sum them up the way they are, right. And why is that? Obviously again, first you will not have electrons being accumulated, right. So, what do I need to do? I need to, what do we say, swap this particular reaction, right, as an, and also multiply that by 2 times, right. And why do I need to multiply this particular reaction by 2 times? Because I need to be able to see to it that the electrons being transferred are the same in both the half reactions, right. So, I need to be able to look at that. So, obviously the transformed or the log K of the overall reaction, what is that going to be equal to? That is going to be equal to minus 2 minus, because I am going to swap this particular reaction, right, log K1, right, plus 1 times log K2, right. So, from that particular value I see that it is around, let us say 30. So, 30.24 plus 86.0. So, that is going to be equal to 116.24, let us say, right, log K for this particular overall reaction. And what is the overall reaction? Let us try to write that down here. Oxygen plus 4 electrons plus 4 H plus goes to 2 H2O, and obviously we are swapping this and multiplying it by 2. So, is going to 2 Fe2 plus 4 electrons, right. Again, you know, here we are looking at, let us say, oxidation of iron, right. So, that is why I am swapping this particular reaction and multiplying it with 2, because I want to be able to balance the electron transfer, right. So, I am going to, let us say, sum that up. So, oxygen plus 2 Fe naught plus 4 H plus is going to be what I am going to have form here, 2 Fe2 plus 2 H2O, right. So, this is the particular reaction for which we just found out the log K value to be 116.24, right. So, obviously, I am going to now use this particular value to calculate K and obviously look at calculation of what is it now Q by K for a particular scenario. But before we go further, let us look at how we end up with log K is equal to this particular set of equation, I guess, right. So, let us say I have A plus B goes to C plus D, and let us say X plus A goes to let us say C plus Z, right. And I have a K1 or equilibrium coefficient for the particular first reaction, K2 for the second reaction, let us say, right. So, if you look at it, let us say K3 or for the overall reaction, what is that now? This is going to be I guess I should not have written it in this manner, but if you write the relevant coefficients and such and see to it that they are cancelled out, let us say, rather than writing it that way, I will write it C plus X plus A plus Z, and now it is easier for us to understand. So, that now it is going to be equal to what now? A plus B plus X plus C goes to A plus C plus D plus Z. So, A, C, I cancel them out. So, it is more or less overall reaction is B plus X goes to D plus Z, right. So, I want to know the equilibrium coefficient of this overall reaction, right. So, how can I get that? If you see that, if you are summing it up, the K is going to be equal to K1 times K2, right, and that is what you see here. Why is that again? K1 as we know is equal to C times D by A times B, and K2 is equal to A times Z by X times C. But I am trying to calculate K3, which is from this particular equation as you see here, D times Z divided by concentration of B by concentration of X, right. So, what is that going to be equal to? If you look at these two variables, it is nothing but equal to K1 times K2, right. So, again I am just trying to show how it comes out here. So, why do I obviously multiply that by -2 here? Minus because I am what do we say swapping the relevant reaction, right, and also 2 because I am multiplying the equation or the reaction by 2, right. So, that is how I guess you end up with this particular kind of a equation here. So, again let us look back at what we are up to. So, we see that log K value is 116.24, right. So, log K value is equal to 116.24. So, now I want to calculate Q, and Q I guess what was that particular reaction I guess, right. So, I am going to assume let us say some particular conditions set at pH 7 and so on, and let us calculate what Q is going to be equal to. Again for that obviously I need the relevant what do we say overall reaction. So, let me write that down again. So, it is going to be equal to O2 plus 2 Fe naught plus 4 H plus, right, is going to go to 2 H2O plus 2 Fe what is this here 2 Fe 2 plus, right. So, obviously Q for this particular case what is it going to be equal to, right. So, it is going to be equal to oxygen activity of O2, but if we say it is in the aqueous phase or dissolved phase, it is aqueous concentration not the gaseous phase, times activity of let us say iron. I am going to assume that is going to be equal pure solid, that is why it is equal to let us say 1 times activity of H plus, right. I guess I just made this up because we need to write the reactants first divided by the products, right. So, I am going to write down Q here. So, that is going to be equal to activity of Fe 2 plus H to the power of 2, and H2O activity we know that it is going to be equal to 1 assuming that it is a dilute solution by activity of O2, right, and again in the aqueous phase not the gaseous phase activity of H plus to the power of 4, right. So, let us say here I assume some particular standard conditions and write this down, right, and again why did we say activity of H2O was equal to 1 and activity of iron was equal to 1? Because I am assuming that H2O again it is dilute system, right. So, again activity is going to be equal to 1 there, and here let us say it is 0 valent iron the solid, right? And if it's a pure solid, we know that the activity is going to be equal to 1, and based on that I have the relevant what do we say equation for Q. So let's say let's take one particular case, obviously when pH equal to 7, right, and let's say the relevant aspects. So if I write down Q, that's going to be equal to, let's say at relatively low concentrations of Fe2 plus, which is I am assuming 10 power minus 3, right. I am assuming that Fe2 plus concentration is 10 power minus 3 and H plus is 10 power minus 7, 10 power minus 7 to the power of, let's say 4, right, because pH is 7. I am assuming it's at pH 7, and let's say it's 10 power minus 4 concentration here of oxygen. You know, I am taking relatively low concentrations of Fe2 plus and oxygen, which is what you would presume or expect in your particular water, and also I am assuming that the pH is still 7 at the neutral what do we say pH, I guess. So if we calculate this, I believe it's going to be equal to minus 6, 4, 7, 4, 28 plus 4, 32, 32 and 6. So it's going to be equal to 10 power 26, right, 10 power 26, pardon me. But as you see from here, K is equal to 10 to the power of 116.24, right, that is what you see here. So what do you see when you calculate Q by K, right, it is very much less than what is this now, 1, right. So I calculated K from the relevant, let us summarize what we have been up to. I calculated K for the overall reaction of oxidation of iron by oxygen, right, or more or less the corrosion of iron by oxygen, right, and I calculated the K value, right, and then I calculated Q, the ion activity product for a particular scenario, as in which was the case at pH 7, and I assumed that iron and oxygen concentrations are relatively low, and obviously I see that Q is much lower, right, it is 10 power 26 and K is something like 10 power 116, which is much less than 1, right. So again keep in mind, if you look at this, even if you change, let us say these variables by a few orders of magnitude, oxygen concentration in the aqueous phase, you only have a threshold, right, 8 milligram or 9 milligram per liter based on the what do we say temperature. So that is more or less what do we say, it will not change much. But even if you vary Fe2 plus concentration a lot, right, even if you increase Fe2 plus concentration a lot, you still see that Q its order of magnitude is off by 80, right, 80 or 90 here, 90 here. So even if you increase the concentration of Fe2 plus, you still see that the corrosion of iron by oxygen is still feasible, that is what you obviously observe in the nature, right. So here that is the case that we just looked at, right. And obviously oxygen concentrations are relatively low in the aqueous phase, right, and that is why you can't vary this much, and even if you affect H plus much, it does not affect your corrosion, let us say the feasibility of corrosion greatly. So let us move on to the other aspect, we are going to look at the reduction potential, the PE approach, I guess, right, and here we are going to call that either redox potential, reduction potential, or so on and so forth. But let us try to understand what it is that we are trying to talk about here, right. So here let us say we have a particular equation for what do we say now, reduction of chromium, right. Here it is I guess in plus 6 state, and here it is in plus 3 state, right. So we are going to try to understand this term called PE, I guess, right. So here I have CrO4 2 minus and I have Cr3 plus, so it is reduction of this particular chromium. So let us try to first write down the equilibrium coefficient for this particular equation now. K is now going to be equal to activity of Cr3 plus times activity of water, which is equal to 1, right, by activity of CrO4 2 minus plus into activity of an electron to the power of 3 into activity of H plus to the power of 8, right. So let us say I try to transform this, and what can I transform this into as, I guess I take the logarithm, and then let us say I try to transform this. So log K is going to be equal to minus log or 3 log activity of the electron, right, and what else do I have? I have plus log of I am going to keep these terms as they are, Cr3 plus by CrO4 2 minus and H plus to the power of 8, right. Let us see if we have the right equations here. So, log k, I take the logarithm. So, I am taking this particular term, the electron term out, right, it is into here, right, and obviously it is in the denominator, thus the negative here and 3. So, looks like I am on the right track. So, I am going to swap these two variables, right, and what does this particular set of what do we say variables look like, right. It looks like what now, it is like q dash, right, but q is obviously equal to what now, what is q dash equal to in terms of q now. If you look at that, it is only missing the term with respect to the electron here, right. So, if I multiply the activity of this particular q with the electron rise to its particular stoichiometry, I see that it is q dash, right. So, that is what we need to understand here. So, I am going to approximate this term by q dash, right, and here I am going to swap the two what do we say variables here. So, it is going to be equal to 3 times log activity of electron, right, is equal to minus log k, right, plus log q dash. I will just write this as q dash, right, and let me write this down here. So, I have 3 log activity of the electron is equal to log k or minus log k if I am not wrong, minus log k plus log q dash, right. Because I want to express it in terms that I am going to use later, I am going to multiply it by -1 minus 3 log electron is going to be equal to log k minus log q dash, right, and I am going to divide by 3 minus log electron is equal to 1 by 3 log k, right, minus 1 by 3 log q dash, right. So, here let us say what is this particular aspect with respect to 3, I guess, right, it is the number of electrons being transferred, right. So, oxidized form, right, plus number of electrons goes to the reduced form, right. So, that is what I see here. So, if I am going to approximate, let us say represent 3 by the number of electrons being transferred, I will be left with minus log activity of electron, right, is going to be equal to 1 by n log k minus 1 by n log q dash, right. So, here this particular term, right, minus log activity of electron similar to let us say minus log activity of the H plus concentration, I am going to call this the Pe, right. So, this is more or less the definition, Pe is minus log activity of the electron, right. So, obviously, this is a value that you are going to try to use to understand the system, and we are going to look at that later obviously. So, Pe is equal to 1 by n log k, and 1 by n log k I am going to say is equal to Pe naught, right. So, Pe equal to Pe naught minus 1 by n log q dash, right. And obviously, what was q dash? Q dash is nothing but equal to the what do we say now, if you take out the electron term from your particular ion activity product, right. So, q dash. So, this is what we have here, right. So, now we are going to spend some time in understanding the particular aspects with respect to P naught, P and so on and so forth, right. So, let us just first look at what it is that I can understand with respect to P naught, I guess, right. P naught now. So, P naught as you see is 1 by n log k, right. So, obviously, again what is k again? It gives you an idea about the concentration of or the activity of the products by activity of the reactants, right. So, what does that mean when k value is higher? So, when k value is higher, it means relatively the concentration of the products is higher, and in this particular set of redox reactions, right, or the reduction reaction as we have written. So, what is the product here? It is the reduced form, right. So, when you have a higher Pe naught, right, what does that mean? It means that the reduced form would what do we say, be present or be predominant when the system is at equilibrium. So, what do we understand from Pe naught, right? A high Pe naught means reduced conditions or reduced form predominates at equilibrium, right. That is what you see here. And again, what is the, how did we get from here? Because we know that P dash equal to 1 by n log k, P naught equal to 1 by n log k, right. High value of P naught means higher value of k, the equilibrium coefficient for that particular reduction half reaction, and for the particular reduction half reaction this is the generalized form, right. And we see that when will k be higher? When this particular variable is higher or the concentration of the reduced form of the relevant compound is higher, right. So, that more or less translates to when a higher P naught value, you see that higher P naught value, or for a particular reaction you see that a particular the high P naught is high, it means that the reduced form is going to predominate at equilibrium, right, or it promotes reduction, right. So, again higher P naught means it promotes reduction. So, in I guess the next couple of sessions we are going to look at, let us say, understanding P in terms of P naught and then trying to understand the system in terms of aspects that we have looked at earlier, right. But I guess due to time constraints I am going to end today's session for now, and we will look at the relevant aspects later on, I guess, and thank you.